So I saw a comment on my last video about zombie games that said how NPCs would ruin the atmosphere of Project Zomboid and not really make it a unique zombie game anymore. And it got me really thinking about how NPCs would affect Project Zomboid. But before we get into that, hello everyone, welcome back and welcome to my channel. I'm Very and I talk about games. If you're new here, consider subscribing and liking the video. It helps out a lot. So Project Zomboid has been around for a long time and it has gone through a variety of changes since its first earlier builds of the game, and for the most part I could see that the changes made to the game have been good and made the game more enjoyable. Now, I'm not a Zomboid veteran, I haven't been following the game from the start, but I have seen how it's evolved and saw that in earlier versions of the game there were NPCs in the game that you could interact with. It looked and felt like very different to the Zomboid we have now, although the NPCs were removed in Zomboid in order for the developers to rework them and then add them back in a later version of the game. And it's been a very long time since they removed the NPCs. I guess they're really reworking the hell out of them. But anyway, in the wake of NPCs being removed from the game, it kind of shifted the atmosphere and vibe of the game. It kind of became a more dreadful and darker and gave the game a more ominous feeling of just that you're not going to survive this apocalypse. That makes the game feel different from the other zombie survival games out there, and that feeling and vibe has kind of become the identity of the game a bit, or at least helped in that aspect. So this sparks the question, if or when NPCs are added back to the game, how will this impact the game? Will they change the gameplay, atmosphere, be in depth, have their own stories, start out in a similar situation like our characters? And there's probably a lot more questions to be asked that I can't think of right now, but let's just focus on these. So first I want to talk about immersion. For me, Project Zomboid is already, in my opinion, one of the most immersive zombie games out there. Even without NPCs, it seems to make me feel more engrossed in the world. With it being empty and me being the only survivor and not looking out for anyone else, it would be hard not to be immersed. So if NPCs are officially added to the game, I think obviously it would make the world feel less empty, adding more dynamism beyond just zombies and the player. Like for example, certain towns in the game could have survivors and bandits going about their routine on how they survive. They could even have bases they go to, or have a camp, or stay moving around. Another thing NPCs would do would add another layer of immersion with random encounters that could happen, like NPCs scavenging, fleeing hordes, or fighting one another, or even the player. And the best part is this can all happen naturally and unscripted and add a uniqueness to Zomboid that it currently doesn't have. Adding on to that, depending on how the developers are making the NPCs and how they want to implement them and make their own systems, there could be a faction system where NPCs could form groups like raiders, stray groups, or just a group of survivors going through the day-to-day of surviving the zombie apocalypse, leading to more of those unscripted random events I mentioned, like base raids, alliances, and community management to keep everyone alive and happy and fed. And I think that would be really cool in a game like Zomboid, but at the same time it takes away from the being alone aspect and that kind of atmosphere that's been present in the game when it's just you against the zombies, weather, and everything else occurring around you. So that's enough about immersion. Now I want to talk about how NPCs would potentially affect the gameplay of Zomboid and how people play. And now, if NPCs were added to the game, and depending on how they are added and how they'd work, it's obviously going to change a lot about how people approach their runs in the game. And also if the NPCs are auto-generated or if it's the same NPCs you run into, it could really change things in the game. So first things first is that NPCs could become allies, helping in combat, base building, and just surviving more, and also in looting too. They could also offer companionship that helps with that lagging loneliness that you get in Zomboid, because I know I get that, and that's why sometimes I just need to take a break from the game for a while. And then on the other side of things, they could also provide an extra challenge when it comes to surviving, with hostile NPCs which introduce human threats to the game, having things like ambushes, being robbed, raided, and much more happening to you around. It would definitely make combat have to be more tactical and have the player be more surgical with what they want to do and how they want to approach some situations, while at the same time keeping keeping in mind the threat of zombies. And then there would also be a shift in the balancing and difficulty of the game, with Project Zomboid already being a very difficult enough zombie game. When you're on your own and even with fewer zombies, it can be very difficult. NPCs early on in the game, mostly friendly ones, would make it easier to survive longer when initially starting out, cause as they say, there is strength in numbers. It would be easier to loot more difficult places than when you're alone, easier to kill more zombies and establish a base and just survive better. All this if you partner up with some NPCs or something like that. But then again, later down the road, the game could come harder, with hostile NPCs and encountering them, fighting them, then also maybe less loot in the world and food to be found, cause again, NPCs are trying to survive too. Maybe even hostile groups which could rival the zombies as endgame threats, and for me, I think that's pretty cool and would add wrinkles to the game that just makes it more tense than it already is. And that's all good and well, but the big thing that can really make or break the experience if NPCs are added would be the technical side of things. Like, will there be AI issues, poorly tuned NPC AI, pathfinding errors, illogical behavior from NPCs, and many more things that could break the immersion of Zomboid or even be more annoying than fun. And then there's also the complexity aspect of the NPCs and making them feel like other survivors. Like, how well will the devs be able to make the NPCs simulate survival instincts and have the same needs as ours? Would the combat logic be refined and make sense in the matter of self-preservation and survival? Will they be looting and looking for food as much as us? Will they also experience the things we experience, like fear, getting fat, tired, overcumbered, and how they deal with that? Then there's also the fear that adding NPCs to the game can introduce new bugs and glitches to the game and mess with already existing and great systems in the game. NPCs could get stuck at crucial areas or make it easier or harder to get XP for your skills and be more complicated than it has to be. And what about the mods and modding community of Zomboid? How flexible and easy would it be for modders to make their mods work on a build with fully functioning NPCs? Would some mods just be unplayable because of NPCs and their systems, or would it be no issue and just an easy workaround for modders? Cause look, Project Zomboid is a great game to mod, and I bet a lot of us have already installed a myriad of mods on the game because they add something new. And I'm not saying that adding NPCs and an NPC system would absolutely crash the modding community and make installing mods unplayable. I'm just throwing out hypotheticals, improbable but still need to think of anything that can happen and how the game can get affected. But I feel like for a long time since I started playing Zomboid, there's always been a thread about NPCs and whether they are coming back. I swear I've seen threads go as back till like 2016 about NPCs coming back. But anyway, it seems like there's a split group of Zomboid fans who like the idea of NPCs coming back and better, and seeing how much more it can add to the game and add more depth to it. And then there's the group of Zomboid fans who love the way the game is right now and think that NPCs would ruin the game in atmosphere, gameplay, the solitary of being alone survival, and NPCs could definitely dilute the game's tone from what it is now. And for me, I feel like I'm kind of on the fence. I feel like I'm choosing which child I like more. On one hand, I already love the tone, atmosphere, and gameplay that the game already has, and I love the solace that comes with it and just the vibe it gives off alone. But then on the other hand, I would love to see a great fleshed out NPC system for Zomboid, like NPCs in RimWorld, or even better if possible. I love to just see another side of Zomboid, but that is dependent on how the NPCs are implemented and presented, because if they feel shallow and off and just bad, then I'd happily not have them at all and just go back to what the game is now. So all in all, with everything being said, NPCs could transform Project Zomboid from a solitary survival sim into a more dynamic, socially complex experience if done right. If implemented correctly, it could elevate PZ to new heights, but if rushed, it might feel like a tacked on feature just done to appease to fans who've been waiting for NPCs for so long. So with that all being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like. Give me your thoughts on if Indie Stone will ever put NPCs back in the game and how it should affect the game. Subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and thank you for watching, and bye. Cut!